Good evening from New York. I'm Chris Hayes. For 4 years, American foreign policy revolved chiefly around what was most personally, politically, and financially beneficial to Donald Trump and his family. And look, for all of America's many sins in foreign affairs through the years, it was a level of institutionalized corruption we'd never quite seen. Of course, we know the ex-president solicited foreign interference in his re-election from a nation desperate to defend itself, looking to spread disinformation about his political rival, which led to his first impeachment. There are some new revelations about that. We'll talk about that later in the show. But the Trump family business and America's business were always intertwined throughout those years. And there is shocking new reporting from the New York Times that reveals what the price for it all was. Quote, 6 months after leaving the White House, Donald Trump's son-in-law, Jared Kushner, secured a $2 billion investment from a fund led by the Saudi Crown Prince, a close ally during the Trump administration. Now, the United States had a complicated but close relationship with Saudi Arabia for many years. That started in 1945 with President Franklin Roosevelt's historic meeting with the first king of Saudi Arabia on the USS Quincy in the Suez Canal. FDR believed, and he wasn't wrong, that the relationship with the world's largest exporter of oil would be crucial in the post-war era. And in the interest of maintaining access to that affordable supply of oil, the U.S. has looked away from a whole lot of corruption and human rights abuses committed by the authoritarian monarchy. And that was just par for the course for many decades. That said, the Trump administration really did take it to a completely new level, elevating Saudi Arabia to essentially America's most important ally. Here's what I mean. Usually, American presidents make their first foreign trip to one of the two nations we border, Canada or Mexico, occasionally a European ally, not Donald Trump. No, his very first stop on his very first foreign trip was, you guessed it, Saudi Arabia, where they quite literally rolled out the red carpet for him. The ex-president elevated the Saudis to #1 ally, and he participated in the ceremonial sword dance, awkwardly bopping with the music. He then joined the Saudi king and the Egyptian president in this strange photo op with a glowing orb. Since that trip, the Trump administration continued an incredibly close relationship with the Saudis and honestly basically did whatever they wanted. I mean, the ex-president withdrew from the Iran nuclear deal to the great praise from the Saudis as well as the Israelis, who had been at odds with Iran for decades. He sold Saudi Arabia billions upon billions of dollars worth of weapons. Now, you may remember when he presented this poster board touting the sales at an Oval Office meeting with Saudi Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman in 2018. And Trump publicly took Saudi Arabia's side when they began a strange blockade of a U.S. ally, Qatar, a country that, keep in mind, hosts the largest U.S. base in the entire region, with American service members there when the whole thing started. At the core of all this was Jared Kushner, the ex-president's son-in-law and senior advisor, who ran the Trump administration's foreign policy in the Middle East. At the beginning of the Trump administration, Kushner developed a close relationship with the Saudi Crown Prince, Mohammed bin Salman, the guy who basically runs the country, often referred to by his initials, MBS. Jared and Mohammed had regular private conversations that concerned some U.S. officials. In fact, the New York Times reported the two men were on a first-name basis, calling each other Jared and Mohammed in text messages and phone calls. Kushner traveled to Saudi Arabia multiple times, making a personal visit to Riyadh in October 2017. David Ignatius reported in a piece for the Washington Post that, quote, the two princes are said to have stayed up until nearly 4 a.m. several nights, swapping stories and planning strategy. And their relationship continued even after MBS had a Washington Post columnist murdered for criticizing his reign. You might remember journalist Jamal Khashoggi was lured under false pretenses to the Saudi consulate in Istanbul, Turkey, where he was killed. His body was dismembered with a bone saw. The CIA concluded that MBS, Jared's buddy, his texting pal, directly ordered that savage murder. But that didn't seem to disturb Donald Trump or members of his administration who just shrugged their shoulders and moved on. The ex-president was more concerned with his billion-dollar arms deal.
Will Jamal Khashoggi's case affect the way you deal with MBS or other Saudi officials?
We have to see what happens. A lot of work's being done on that, and we're going to have to see what happens. I don't like stopping massive amounts of money that's being poured into our country. I know they're talking about different kinds of sanctions, but they're spending $110 billion on military equipment and on things that create jobs, like jobs and others for this country.
Yeah, he was real focused on the jobs. Now, 2 weeks after Khashoggi's murder, Secretary of State Mike Pompeo arrived in Saudi Arabia, all smiles as he greeted MBS. Hey, buddy. Woo, how you doing? Yeah, look at that B-roll. Just two chaps laughing it up. At the end of the visit, Pompeo announced that the U.S. was giving Saudi Arabia a few more days to conduct their investigation to Khashoggi's disappearance. I mean, a tough investigation, right? I mean, who did it? The Trump administration then basically just dropped the issue. Jared Kushner kept up his bromance with MBS, the guy who apparently ordered the murder, working the relationship practically up to his last day in the White House. I do wonder if they ever texted or talked about it. In fact, on January 6th, Kushner was on his way home from another trip to Saudi Arabia. Just think about that for a second, okay? January 6th. Why was he in Saudi Arabia 2 weeks before the end of the Trump presidency? Was he doing official foreign policy up to the last minute just to make sure those deals stuck? Or, another plausible explanation, Jared Kushner was using the connections he fostered as an emissary for the American government in the Middle East, which he only got because of who he married, for his own personal financial connections in, the future 2 weeks later. Lo and behold, it worked. Because we're now learning that 6 months after that visit, the Saudis invested $2 billion with a B dollars in Kushner's new private equity firm. Man, what an entrepreneur. Now, you could say, well, he's a well-connected businessman with a very famous name, one of those legacy cases that money just dumps on the head of. That's just how things work. But, the other thing you got to say here is Jared Kushner, again, got a name. His daddy made a lot of money. Not a very good businessman. In fact, a panel that screens investments for the main Saudi sovereign wealth fund cited many concerns about the proposed deal, including the experience of the fund's management, that would be Jared, the possibility the kingdom would be responsible for the bulk of the investment and risk. They found the fledgling firm's operations to be, and I'm quoting here, unsatisfactory in all aspects. Is that bad? And objected to a proposed asset management fee that, quote, seems excessive. But guess what? Mohammed, Jared's buddy, the dude he texts with, the guy that apparently ordered the murder of a dissident because he wrote columns about democracy, that guy, Crown Prince, MBS, Jared's homie, overruled them for his old buddy Jared. Isn't that a nice story of friendship? Things you do for your bros? Essentially, the Trump administration sold U.S. foreign policy, Jamal Khashoggi's life, and American stated principles on liberty, democracy, and freedom of the press for, $2 billion that went straight into Jared Kushner's pocket.